Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fallen Flags of America. I'm your host, L&M Productions, today, and today we are discussing what is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated steam locomotives of the Southern Steam Program going back in the 1970s. Savannah and Atlanta 750. So, as for the picture of the day, we have Savannah and Atlanta 750 when it was on an excursion here, taken at Gulfport, Mississippi, on May 24th, 1975, and it was on an excursion from Gulfport to Mobile and back, and it was being turned on a Y, which at the time was owned by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, seen here. So, Savannah and Atlanta 750 is a 462 Pacific, or Light Pacific type, as it's known, being built in January 1910 by the American Locomotive Company, or ALCO, at their Schenectady, New York shops, originally for the Florida East Coast Railway as FEC number 80. Throughout the 1930s, FEC had sold many of their locomotives, this mainly being due to the fact that at the time, FNC kind of was hit by a major hurricane, as most places are in Florida, that kind of almost bankrupted the railroad. So they had to sell a lot of locomotives, and 750 just so happened to be one of these locomotives. Now, this locomotive also worked a famous section of the FEC that was known as Flagger's Folly, and it was a railroad that ran from I believe it was Florida, and it ran out to the Florida Keys, which are some islands off the coast of Florida. And it was a bridge that it was one of the longest bridges ever built for a railroad, and it was one of the locomotives that worked this route. Now, that track stayed open until in the 1930s, when it was destroyed by a hurricane that ravaged the area and almost bankrupted the railroad. FEC number 80 was officially sold in 1935 to the Savannah and Atlanta Railway, where it received its current number, 750. The locomotive pulled commuter trains mainly for the rest of its life, as well as some mixed freight trains for the Savannah and Atlanta, until the early 1950s, when the Savannah and Atlanta was dieselized. In 1962, the Savannah and Atlanta would donate the locomotive to the Atlanta chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, who began using the locomotive to pull occasional excursion trains. 750 was leased to the Southern Railway in the 1970s as to take part in the Southern Steam Program, which lasted from the 1970s, I want to say 1971, until 1984, when the program, well, the program did not end. It continued into Norfolk Southern for a long time, but the lease expired on the locomotive in 1984. From 1985 through 1989, the locomotive would pull excursion trains for a short-lived tourist operation that was called the New Georgia Railroad around Atlanta, Georgia. That railroad did not last long, really, because unfortunately it did not get the ridership it needed. And at that time, Savannah and Atlanta 750 was very old, and it was suffering from firebox issues, which led to its retirement. The locomotive thankfully did not meet the torch, as it was sold to a railroad museum in Georgia, the Southeastern Railway Museum, where it remains on static display tucked away, and they take really good care of it. Now, that was just a overview of its history. Now let's get into the actual history of the locomotive itself. So, as I already mentioned, Savannah and Atlanta 750 was the 14th member out of 31 Class 65 462 Pacific locomotives built for the FEC. Oh, I'm sorry. It was the 14th member of the 31 class, which 65 of these locomotives built for the FEC by Alco at their Schenectady Locomotive Works in Schenectady, New York, which this complex used to be the Schenectady Locomotive Works. I guess that was before it was bought by Alco. Anyway, 750 was originally numbered as Florida number 80. The FEC assigned number 80 to pull passenger trains, mainly across their main line, mostly across the Overseas Railroad, which was an extension of the FEC that ran between Miami to Key West, Florida. In 1926, number 80 was one of five Class 65 Pacifics to be modified with larger cylinders, superheated flues, and other features to make their performance more identical to the Class 98 locomotives. Unfortunately, in 1935, the Labor Day hurricane destroyed many of the Overseas Railroad long bridges, and due to the Great Depression, the FEC shut down the line. In order to recoup their financial losses, the FEC sold most of their 462 Pacifics, with number 80 being sold to the Savannah and Atlanta Railway in October 1935. Upon arrival to the SNA, number 80 was renumbered to 750, its firebox being converted from an oil burner to a coal burner, and was repainted to have a closer resemblance of a typical southeastern American passenger locomotive. The SNA reassigned the 750 to haul passengers between Savannah and Calumet, Georgia. It often interchanged with the Central Georgia Railway, so the passengers would reach Atlanta. This practice, however, slowly became less common for 750 as SNA gradually added diesel locomotives to their fleet. By 1952, Savannah and Atlanta 750 was retired from revenue service altogether. After a subsequent period in storage, the SNA's president, a Mr. Charles A. Gay, authorized to donate 750 to the Savannah Atlanta chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, or NRHS. So now we get into the excursion service part of 750's life. So, from 1964 through 1989. In 1964, 750 was restored by the Southern Railway to operating condition and became the very first steam locomotive to pull a public excursion train for the Southern Railway's brand new steam excursion program, as it pulled one such trip for the Atlanta chapter NRHS. Within the following years, the Southern would keep 750 on loan to pull a variety of excursions along the Southern's mainline trackage, alongside Southern's other locomotives, including Southern Railway 4501, which is a 282 Mikado type, 722 and 630, which 722 and 630 are both consolidation type steam locomotives, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a 280 wheel arrangement. In November of 1969, during the 25th anniversary of the Southern Railway, an event took place called the Steam-O-Rama, which took place in Anderson, Alabama, along the Birmingham to Alabama main line. It featured Savannah Atlanta 750, Southern Railway 4501, and a visitor from across the pond, being London and Northeastern Railway A3 class, Flying Scotsman of the LNER, which was owned by a Mr. Alan Pegler, which, if you'd like to know more on Flying Scotsman and its history, I highly recommend watching a video by the Unlucky Tug. He did an excellent video on the history of Flying Scotsman, so I'll leave a link to it in the description. As time dragged on, however, the steam program had grown so popular that the trains exceeded 750's hauling capacity, hence why the locomotive would often receive assistance from diesels, and it would take parts in some doubleheaders along with Southern Railway 722, which was the only other consolidation besides 630 that was preserved. In 1975, the 750 was taken out of service for an extensive overhaul. In 1983, it went back into service and double-headed an NRHS excursion with Norfolk and Western 611. on the Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac Railroad, or RF&P, from Alexandria to Richmond, Virginia, and back on July 17th, 1984. 1983, excuse me, and my dates mixed up there. After the 1984 season ended, the Southern lease to operate 750 expired, and the locomotive was returned to Atlanta, Georgia. The locomotive was then leased to a short line, well, technically a tourist operation, called the New Georgia Railroad to pull mainline trips throughout certain parts of Georgia. In 1989, however, 750's firebox was discovered to have been worn out, and after estimating the repair cost to be too expensive, it was decided to remove 750 from service, and the New Georgia Railroad subsequently replaced it with a larger locomotive, Atlanta and West Point 290, which was that was also a Pacific. It was a 284 Heavy Pacific, which was very similar to the Southern Railway PS4 class. I'll do a discussion on that class on another video. So what happened to 750 from 1989 to present date? As of 2022, 750 remains on static display, tucked away at the Southeastern Railroad Museum of Duluth, Georgia. Since the rebuilding the locomotive would be too costly, 750 is unlikely to be brought back under steam anytime soon. Despite this, the museum has been keeping 750 in very nice cosmetic condition, so it would be presentable to the general public. So that's going to be it for this video on 750. I apologize that this video was kind of short. I just really didn't have like a script prepared for this video like I usually do, just because I've been out of doing this for a while, and I would just like to take a minute and say thank you all for helping me get to where I am with my channel. I would not be able to do any of this without your support, so thank you all guys so very much for helping and watching this video. If you like this video, please be sure to there's a like button down there. Please be sure to hit that button so that it may be recommended. If you're not subscribed, you can hit the subscribe button. It's free to subscribe anytime you want to. You can always unsubscribe. It's free. And if you have any questions or concerns on the topic you'd like me to cover in our next video, please be sure to leave it in a comment down below. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. This is L&M Productions, out.